Welcome to FCLE Seminar, the Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Musto. Today, we are taking a look at landmark Supreme Court case. This one's called Wisconsin versus Yoder, 1972. This was a case that explored the delicate balance between religious freedom and the state's interest in education. This is all based on the guide put together by the Florida Department of Education. Hey, I've got links to that study stuff in the show notes, so check those out at FCLE Seminar on Spotify and YouTube. All right, let's get started. Landmark Supreme Court case number 15, Wisconsin versus Yoder, 1972. Case background. In this case, a group of Amish parents refused to send their children to public school beyond the 8th grade, citing that the religious beliefs, which are fundamental to their distinctive way of life, were more important. Wisconsin law, however, required compulsory education until the age of 16. Now, this created a clash between religious freedom and the state's interest in education, all leading to the landmark Supreme Court decision in 1972. See, the Amish community is deeply rooted in traditional values and valued an agrarian lifestyle, believed that high school education conflicted with their religious beliefs. They argued that exposure to worldly influences in high school would undermine and actually, the record says, endanger their own salvation and disrupt their community's way of life. See, this case focuses on the conflict between an individual's right to practice their religion freely, protected by the First Amendment's Free Exercise Clause, and the state's interest in compulsory education. Fascinating. The Constitution protects individual rights and liberties. Protects them from who or what? See, the real question in court becomes, was Wisconsin's state compulsory education requirement a violation of the First Amendment? Because remember, this is all based on the fact that the Amish parents were prosecuted under Wisconsin law for refusing to send their children to school for religious reasons. Okay, pause for thought. Where do you weigh in? Based on your knowledge of the Constitution and the previous landmark Supreme Court cases, who do you think won in Wisconsin versus Yoder? Think about it, but not too long. The court's decision. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court sided with the Amish parents. See, Chief Justice Warren Burger, writing for the majority, recognized the importance of religious freedom and the unique nature of the Amish community. The court acknowledged that the state's interest in education did not, in fact, outweigh the fundamental right for the Amish to exercise freedom of religion, resulting in the Amish students being exempted from compulsory secondary education. Now, there is a lot more to this case, just like previous cases, but in a nutshell, the Yoder decision reaffirmed the importance of religious freedom in American society. It recognized that the First Amendment protects not only individual beliefs, but also the right to live one's life according to those beliefs, even when those beliefs differ significantly from mainstream society. The Yoder case remains a significant precedent in cases involving religious liberty and the balance between individual rights with the state's interest. The constitutional principle. The constitutional principle here is the First Amendment. This case really focused on the First Amendment and the free exercise of religion that protects religious freedom. In this case, it takes precedence over Wisconsin's compulsory education laws. Now, remember, the First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Let's review. Here are the key takeaways from Wisconsin versus Yoder. Religious freedom versus state interest. The core issue in Wisconsin versus Yoder was the conflict between the state's interest in compulsory education and the right to freely exercise religion. Number 2, Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court sided with the Amish families, recognizing that their religious beliefs and practices were central to their community's existence, and just as important, the free exercise thereof is protected under their First Amendment. And balancing of interest. The court carefully balanced the state's interest in education with the fundamental right to religious freedom, ultimately finding that the state's interest did not outweigh the significant burden that compulsory high school attendance would place on the Amish community. In essence, the Yoder case established that the right to freely exercise one's religion can sometimes outweigh the state's interest in compulsory education. Hey, thanks for listening. Join us again on FCLE Seminar, a Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast, so you can start studying for your test. The important thing is to start studying and study like a rock star. Like, subscribe, or leave your questions or comments for us at FCLE Seminar on YouTube or Spotify. This podcast is listener supported. Contributions can be made via the listener support link on Spotify, or you can buy me a coffee via the link in the show notes. This is your host, Mercedes Musto. Join me again on FCLE Seminar, a Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast, so you can pass the FCLE.